Good afternoon, everyone. Jeff Marsh with Our Country, Our Choice. I'm here with the CEO, Douglas Macgregor. How you doing, Doug?
Good, Jeff.
Doug, Americans are very emotional right now due to the horrible things that are happening in the Middle East. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, I think there are some things we should be very careful about as Americans watching this tragedy unfold. The potential for a larger regional war is quite serious. What Washington must not do is make the mistake that it made in Ukraine, and that is to grossly underestimate the opponent. We underestimated Russian resolve and military power. Today, we need to ensure we are not underestimating the resolve and the strength of all the Muslim nations in the Middle East that are rapidly unifying against Israel. And this is a unity that Israel has not faced in the past. We don't want Israel to face it now because the last thing we want is for Israel to be destroyed. But we have to look at the facts, and the facts are this. Russia is involved in the sense that it's willing to escort Egyptian and Turkish ships and equipment to Egypt to be to supply aid to the Gazan population. The rest of the region is 100% behind the Turks, the Russians, and the Egyptians. The Egyptians are the last people that want to see a regional conflict, but they cannot tolerate a mass migration out of Gaza into Egypt. This means the United States needs to take the lead. It's not enough to essentially provide Israel with a blank check. What we need to do is tell the Israelis what the dangers are and urge them to reconsider their plan for Gaza, which could be an enormous casualty producing event. It could produce casualties for Israel as well as for the civilian population of Gaza.
Certainly, some scary times, and you're starting to hear demonstrations all over the world.
Oh, absolutely. The problem is we just don't understand the extent to which the Muslim populations of the Middle East, as well as around the world, are enraged. There may be as many as 40 to 50 million Muslims living in European countries. They are equally enraged. In other words, the potential for this war to break out and spread is beyond American imagination. This is something Washington has to be aware of. It needs to take steps to ensure this does not happen. It must contain the conflict.
And that brings us to the next question of the borders. Are we doing enough to protect our borders? Certainly not, but I'd like to hear your point on that.
You know, looking at the open borders policy that this administration implemented, you have to conclude that the whole idea of open borders is designed to deliberately destroy the United States. We can't possibly absorb, maintain, and ultimately assimilate the millions that have crossed. We've had millions before. They're still with us. They're not assimilated. Now we're dealing with at least another 7 million more illegals. They are not going to be assimilated. We can't. We have American needs. We have Americans who not only need employment, they need access to affordable health care, and providing assistance to all of these people that show up at the border on the assumption that they are refugees seeking asylum is absurd. The majority of people coming across are not necessarily from Central or South America. In fact, more and more, they're from all over the world, including hundreds of thousands of Muslims from the Middle East and Africa, including Chinese young men who are coming into the United States. Now, we have only anecdotal evidence for this, but when we ask people, why are you coming? The Chinese, of course, say nothing. They will reveal nothing, but they're all young men. Where are they going? What are they doing? What is their true purpose? And then, of course, you have vast numbers of Muslims. Some of them have been honest and said, I'm coming here to do damage, to harm the United States for what it's done to the Muslim world. This is a catastrophe. This is a disaster. We are asking for trouble inside our society that we either don't need nor don't want. This has got to stop. How do we do this? Well, I suppose people can stand up and demand that the president be held accountable. The President of the United States is the chief law enforcement officer in the country. He is obligated to uphold and defend the laws of the United States. He has done the opposite. He has effectively broken our laws or simply refused to enforce them. And he has admitted millions of people that are unvetted, about whom we know next to nothing, and who cannot all be coming here for asylum. In fact, we know they're not. So when you begin to talk about what do, we've got to go back to Washington. This has to be addressed to the president, and by the way, to Congress, because senators and members of Congress who may be Republicans or Democrats, who may hold traditional values, have certainly not made an effort to stop any of it. They all seem to be afraid to stand up and be counted, but that's what's required right now.
Well, that would certainly be a good place to start. That's Colonel Douglas Macgregor, CEO of Our Country, Our Choice. Please join our movement at ourcountryourchoice.com. Thank you and God bless.
Thanks.